Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. Today I'm going to talk about what happens after you finish working the 12 steps with a sponsor. I, like many people that I know, thought that once I finished the 12 steps, something magical would happen and all the problems in my life would melt away and I'd live happily ever after. And something magical does happen when you finish working the 12 steps with a sponsor. Something during that process, if you've done a thorough job and you've really been honest in the work you've done, something beautiful does happen. But that doesn't mean that life is done throwing challenges your way. And it also doesn't mean that your growth and evolution as a person is done. That work continues, and the idea is that you use what you've learned in the 12 steps and apply the 12 steps themselves on a daily basis so that that growth can continue. But that was something that I didn't understand in the beginning. And I still had a lot of work to do, and I have a lot of work to do in order to continue growing the direction that I want to be growing in my recovery. And I know from experience, personal experience, as well as watching other people in recovery, that there are only two directions you can move in recovery. You can either get further into recovery or you can slide backwards. There is no staying where you are. You either keep growing or you're going backwards. So it's important to me to look at what do I need to be doing on a daily basis in order to keep that growth moving forward, and really making sure that I'm doing that and open to changes that help me do that in order to avoid moving backwards. I want to read some of what Tommy Rosen says about this in Recovery 2.0. And he starts off talking about the very thing I mentioned, that you kind of wish that you could just do the 12 steps and everything would be good to go. But here's what he has to say about it. A part of me wishes that I could have ended this book here and reported to you that the 12 steps worked their magic and I lived happily ever after. But you see, that is the exact problem. The very idea of happily ever after is as much an illusion as the idea of a cure when it comes to addiction. We're all looking for a quick and complete fix, a cure. We want to be able to say, I was this way before and now I'm better. It's great, and that's that. Yet we know enough to know that life doesn't work that way. I'm 23 years sober. Of course, I'm confident in my recovery, but I still choose to take things as they come, one day at a time. For me, every day means observation, focus, and concentration on what is happening inside and outside. This means that my process of evolution is ongoing. And that's starred and underlined, that last sentence. This means my process of evolution is ongoing. And that's the way that I like to think about it, is I have got to focus all my efforts and energy and concentration on growing and moving forward. Because if I'm not doing that, I am going to move backwards. And life is going to hit me with things that threaten to take me that direction. He goes on to say, I once believed that the 12 steps would take care of any challenge life presented. Somewhere along the way, I must have missed the memo. Tommy, you will encounter things in life that the 12 steps cannot address. Some of the challenges I was going to face had been ingrained in my psyche over the course of my life. The fact that I was sober and followed the 12 steps did not mean I was cured of my particular approach to being human. The 12 steps are really the first step. They were the work that readies you to do the rest of the work that you get to do and must do in your life. Now, just to clarify, what I don't think Tommy is saying here is that you leave the 12 steps behind. He is saying that working the 12 steps with a sponsor is just the beginning, and then but doing that does not solve all of life's problems. Then you get to apply the steps and everything you've learned from them to life's problems on a continual basis. And in terms of life's problems, we got to accept the fact that life, just because we got sober and just because we went through the steps, doesn't mean we're going to be happy all the time. Far from it. Here's what he says about that. We must also realize that there are going to be good days and bad days, good periods and challenging periods. For me to have a sustainable recovery has required the 12 steps as a beginning foundation and then a continuing process of growth in which I address the most important areas of my life. To see the 12 steps as the be-all and end-all is to misunderstand their place as a foundation in the lifelong process of recovery and personal growth. Just knowing this will make the 12 steps more successful. So, when we're looking at our use of the 12 steps, a lot of us really approached those first and foremost as a way to stop using drugs and alcohol. But as we start to progress in our recovery, we realize that our addictive minds are playing a role in all sorts of different areas of life that we had no idea of. And we can apply the 12 steps to those areas of life to help us move forward and grow there. But it's important for us to realize that that work continues to happen as life goes on. Here's the last paragraph I'll read from him. He says, I learned the hard way that one can recover from severe drug addiction and alcoholism, but still live life in the frequency of addiction. It was alive in me through at least the first 12 years of my recovery. Since becoming aware of this in my own life, I've begun to notice it in most recovering addicts. We seem to be great at remaining in the frequency of addiction. We continue to engage in activities, smoking, overconsumption of food, codependent relationships, sugar, coffee, gambling, and pornography that demote rather than promote us. Maybe some people can live this way and get away with it. For people in recovery, these behaviors keep us stuck in a frequency of addiction and perpetuate our vulnerability. Many people have relapsed because they did not have the full picture of recovery in mind. It was not the fault of the 12 steps that they relapsed. They just had no further plan or place in they just had no further plan in place or understanding that they needed one when life showed up and kicked their ass. So when I when I got through working the 12 steps with a sponsor, one of the most devastating things that happened was, probably a couple of weeks later when I ran up against some challenge or difficulty in life. And I thought this was over. I thought the whole point of getting sober and going through these steps was that all the hard stuff was going to be over. And it's a wake-up call when you get that first slap in the face by life, when life really kicks you in the ass. And you say, oh man, I thought that I was just going to be happy all the time. No. And you have to embrace the fact that nobody's supposed to be happy all the time. You're not supposed to be floating on cloud nine all the time. And that's tough for us because a lot of us go through the period we sometimes call the pink cloud, in the first few months of recovery, where it just seems like nothing can touch us and everything's great and life is just beautiful. And then something happens inevitably that causes us to come crashing down. And those are the moments that are really tough. And I go through these periods occasionally where, life just seems tough. Something's going on. There's a lot of stress. Or maybe I just feel depressed, and I have to think about two things in that situation. What have the 12 steps taught me to do in those situations? And what did I used to do? Used to, like if I was feeling depressed, I would just sit around and mope and get caught up in that depression and blame others for that depression and use a lot of drugs and alcohol to deal with that depression and try to escape from it. Now I just accept it for what it is. And then my first instinct is, who can I help? Who can I reach out to? Who can I share my feelings with? My first instinct is less about being by myself and just sitting with my depression, and more about finding an outlet in the community to talk through. Those are the days where I'll go to a meeting, and when someone says, "How you doing?" I say, "Pretty bad. I'm doing pretty bad. Can I tell you about it?" And I didn't used to do that. If someone asked me how I was doing and I was miserable at the time, I would just say, "I'm doing great. How are you?" Because we just don't typically tell the truth in those situations. But these days I do, and that's because I've learned that's the appropriate way for me to deal with those emotions. And so now with the 12 steps, it's important to realize once you go through them and get done working them with a sponsor, the big part of the work, I think, begins at that point. So it's not that you're done with the 12 steps and it's all good. Like, no, you're done with the 12 steps. You've laid the foundation. Now you build the house. And that house is something that you're going to build and add on to and improve on until the day you die. That's the attitude I've had to have. The 12 steps are just the foundation. The house is what I work on every day. And I don't have to go fast. And I don't have to, and I might make mistakes as I'm building the house. And that's okay, because the 12 steps, that foundation, has taught me how to fix mistakes when I make them. So I can fix those mistakes when I make them. And then as I find something new, if I start getting into yoga, then I can add more onto the house, and I can keep building this house that has all sorts of awesome stuff outside of just the 12 steps. And that's really cool. There's nothing that says that I can't do that. But the important thing to realize is that, if the 12 steps are a foundation and then you just decide to live on the foundation, you're just sleeping on a concrete slab. And I'm not saying that to condescend the 12 steps. I'm saying that to put in perspective what the work actually is. And if we use the 12 steps to build our house, then we're going to have the tools we need to build a good place for us to live the rest of our lives. But it is lifelong work. Once I accepted that and understood that, then dealing with the problems became more of a thing I had to do rather than some life-threatening situation. That's the way I always used to react to big problems in life, is oh no, the sky is falling. I don't have to do that anymore. I can just address problems as they come up and get through them one day, 1 minute, 1 hour at a time, along with help from my friends, my family, from anybody in recovery who I can talk to. And that's really what I've learned from the 12 steps. It's an ongoing process. It's something we get to do every day. But don't expect that when your sponsor says, "Congratulations, we've done what we came here to do. You're now ready to go out and share this with someone else." Don't expect all of life's problems don't expect to be immune from them. They will come, but hopefully now you have the foundation you need to handle them. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good one.